If you want a quick recap of like a comedic recap of 2020, watch it. But also, it's fucking depressing.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't need that, dude. I don't need that.
Mm-mm.
You know what I need? The bop.
The bop.
No,
I mean,
the
Afro
nub.
Nub Asian Grill.
The nub.
Yeah,
The
the
nub. The nub.
I need the nub. Let's cut that part
Yeah,
out.
cut that out. Cut that out.
Cut that out.
JP, Rob, this episode's wild. That's all I gotta say.
Buckle up.
That's all I gotta say.
I'm ready.
I feel like I should get water for this. Like no, we just gotta run it.
Run it.
それは進み続けたものにしかわからない。
Yo. Yo.
What just happened?
Yeah.
What do you mean? Elaborate.
Wait. Was that Aaron?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It looks like an Aaron. And it
A lot like an Aaron to me.
did it sound like an Aaron to you, Josh?
Sounded like an Aaron to me, John.
What the fuck's he doing there?
An Aaron minus a leg.
Yeah.
Which is no big deal for him because he can just, tighten it back. But like, what? What the fuck is going on?
What the fuck is going on? What in the world?
What is going on, indeed?
Well, JP, you ever leave the oven on and just leave your house?
I really enjoy seeing that that Marcel scene where it becomes a little bit more, or it gives a little bit more rationale as to why Rhina is kind of a split personality type of dude.
Yeah.
In that he feels like he has to live for Marcel, which I think is an interesting take on that. I kind of wasn't expecting it to go down like that. Actually, I wasn't expecting them to expand on it at all, to be honest, but I'm happy they did.
My question for JP and Rob is, what do you think then, thinking back to when they met and found out that Ymir had Marcel's Titan? Like, what do you think about their interactions now? What do you think might have been going through the characters' minds, stuff like that?
Man, there were so many interactions between them. It's hard to think back and compare them all. But I get it now. That's why they wanted to bring her back, so they could have the brother that didn't go eat her, and that's who we've been seeing in the battles of the past 2 episodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I think it's like these last couple episodes in the end of the previous season reveal Ymir's sort of memories, and like because she wanted to go home too, and now that makes sense because she's not from there. She was brought to the wall, turned into a Titan, and pushed off a cliff, off of the wall, right? So like it makes sense that she feels like she has an actual home to go back to. And it makes sense why she would run off, right? I remember wondering why she would... It looked like betrayal to me at the time, but like it all clicks into place at this point.
Then again, her home didn't really care about her, right? She was an orphan girl that was mistreated and like taught that, or like told to lie about being a deity that she wasn't, and then just like executed. So the memories of her home aren't really pleasant, but I guess home's home.
I do have a comment about that. I think that's interesting because one thing that this show's really trying to do is that she is the bearer of the Jaws Titan, and she has the memories of the former Jaws Titan. She could have had the sentiment.
Oh.
She could have had the sentiment of the former Jaws, because she couldn't quite explain why she betrayed them either. She was just like, that was just my knee-jerk reaction, and it could have been. It could have been the will of Marcel.
So going off of
Interesting.
that, so to add a little bit more to what you're saying, Alex, so one thing that it wasn't quite apparent at the time, but now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, um, it does seem like Ymir was a little wishy-washy in, going with Rhina and then going with Krista with the scouts and then kind of switching back and forth a little bit. But it seemed like it was there was like some rationale behind it where you could kind of see that, okay, well, at the end of the day, she's doing it for Krista, but there's perhaps a little bit more subtlety to that, in that perhaps there were some memories from Marcel that were affecting that. What should I do? Wishy-washy, back and forth type of motive.
I mean, yes, that has to be. It has to be Marcel's memories that would make her be wishy-washy, because everything that we had seen up to that point, Ymir loved Historia, and it seems to be there'd be no reason for her to abandon Historia, unless it was somehow keeping her safe. But by giving the Jaws Titan back to people across the sea, she would be basically endangering Historia, because you'd be giving them a weapon, right?
So what I will say, and this is only to encourage you to work with the information you have, as someone who's read a lot of the manga at this point, based on the information you have, I would encourage you to reflect on the conversations between Ymir, Reiner, and Bertolt. Not only when they're in the tree with Eren, like captive or whatever, but also when she finally makes her decision after the rest of the scouts have caught up to them, and she's like talking with Historia, and they're trying to tell, or Bertolt and Reiner are trying to tell Ymir, like, look, if you don't come with us, this is what's going to happen. Like, it's going to put Historia in danger, yada, yada, stuff like that. I would just encourage you to examine that, and with this new information, kind of look at it through that new lens. Not that it'll necessarily lead you to new revelations, but I think it'll give you further context for your understanding of all of the characters and why they made the choices they made.
So JP, you were not here last week, but did you feel the same tone shift this season from previous seasons that we felt?
Sure. There's definitely a tone shift, because not only has our main character shifted, we're also in a different land, right? We're across the sea now, and it appears to be the future, maybe 4 years post where the previous season left off, it seems like. So there's definitely a difference in the scenario in that sense, but it's also going back in time and showing us kind of the background of what these kids that grew up on this side of the ocean have been told and what they believe, and it makes it difficult to side with either side, right? The people here, the Eldians here, are all being forced to fight this war with the belief that it'll save them, right? But the people across the sea, they've just been ignorant. Our boys in between the walls, they've just been constantly fought or been under the onslaught of the Titans. So they're equally, I guess, true in they have good purpose in trying to fight back. So it's hard to see who's right, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was leading up to a question now, because now it's revealed that Eren, in some capacity, for some reason, is here, and establishing that this is a new story with a new protagonist as groundwork. How does that make you feel now?
So I think it's an interesting dynamic. It's sort of like an indirect parallel to what's the exact same story, but now in the reverse direction, right? And that, I guess we don't know. Okay, so maybe you have to wait to see a little bit more of why Aaron is actually there. But it does seem like he's a bit shell-shocked over the whole thing. And so it seems like, I don't know if, maybe he's being, he might be being forced to be there. I don't know. Maybe it's his own will. But either way, it seems like it's this sort of, push someone into this completely new world, get as much intel you can on it, and eventually use it against them. And it's right because there's this whole dynamic that JP brought up of, because you're seeing it from these two different perspectives, and they're playing with this dynamic of, well, you saw it from one perspective, you see how there are these traitors and how they reacted to that, and now you're putting it into the other perspective. Would you still consider this person a traitor to this party, or do you empathize with them? And I don't know, it's a very interesting, as we said before, it's a tone shift for sure. And I really would like to see how they are going to continue to present this in the future.
Yeah, I will always that scene of Reiner with the rifle in his mouth is just forever going to be seared in my head. That was
dude. That gave me a lot of anxiety right there.
yeah, no doubt. And it's something that stuck in my mind as we were doing the rewatch of Attack on Titan. That scene, every time Reiner was in it and he talked about like his motives, even in the most vague ways, that scene's the thing that stuck out to me. And it makes me empathize with him a lot more.
So I have another provocative question, and this one's for all of you, I guess. Who do you, if we're saying Reiner feels like he's betrayed someone and like that's kind of tearing him up on the inside, who do you feel like Reiner actually feels like he's betrayed?
This is going to be the most cliche answer I ever give for the rest of the
I think I'm going to agree with you, yeah.
It's himself. It's himself.
Yep.
No question. Because he grew up with so much, there was so much state propaganda. The guy grew up brainwashed. And he thought that his only purpose in life was to hate other people and leverage that hate to make a better living for himself and his mother. And when he eventually meets these people and are forced to live with them, he humanizes them to an incredible degree. Because at the end of the day, they're the same race of people as him, and they have all the same attributes and qualities as he does. And there's so much cognitive dissonance, and the realization of the people he has killed makes him hate himself. And to be fair, I'd hate myself. I'd really hate myself.
I couldn't have said it better. Yeah. It's gotta be himself. I can't think of anyone else it would be. And I feel like that's the only thing that would drive him to that position where he thinks the only way to, I guess, end the guilt that you have to live with, if you can't forgive yourself, would be to do that, right?
It's, I guess, after having lived in the island with all these people that are, he's been told are devils, and realizing how similar they all are and that they are his people in the end, he basically realizes that his entire upbringing was a lie to fight fire with fire, right? So that he, a Marleyan, would be killing Marleyans to basically for the purpose of these other people that are holding his own people captive and treating them like indentured servants. So you're furthering the purpose of your own demise, basically. And I mean, that alone, I think, realizing that the truth that would make that okay is not actually true, and that your actions have indeed been the reason why your people continue to be, say, enslaved. I don't know.
Just gonna say follow-up question, because I'm an English teacher now. How does Reiner fit as a foil for Aaron.
Yeah, I'll straight up refrain from this one, but
I think that's a fair choice.
At least if I were to look at it on the aspect of motive, the same motive, but just different sides of the coin. Right? Wanting to say, I gotta free my people. Oh, I gotta free my people. It is an interesting question, but I'm still not sold on the fact that these two are perfect foils of each other. So it's a little hard for me to try and compare them in the same.
And the reason why I asked this today instead of, like a week or two ago when we were watching other episodes is because I finally saw them really hammering it in. And so I don't want to try to paint you guys to force you to see it my way. But I do think it's worth noting the very explicit parallels between the two. Right? Like the kid Reiner before he showed up to interact with Aaron, where at that point he was pretending to be Marcel, or however we want to interpret that. We see him running alongside a wall, looking up at that wall, looking for trying to obtain a way to gain freedom, right? We see Aaron staring at the wall, thinking about how he can gain his freedom, right? We see moments where Reiner's saying, I'm going to go to this island and kill all of the Eldians. We see plenty of moments where Aaron's like, I'm going to get out of these walls and kill all the Titans. We see moments where they see what they want to be in each other, right? Like we see that clearly shown in this episode with Aaron wanting to be like Reiner, right? I think we get a lot of those moments. But we also get moments where we see that Reiner's like, how can this guy keep going? Right? And I don't know if that's something that's a little subtle, but we definitely see moments of that where Reiner's like, he has this drive, right? We see Reiner constantly talking about how he wants to return home. Aaron's always talking about how he wants to go home. Now, their reasonings are different. I don't want to pull out. That's a stretch, certainly. But I think it'd be, I think it's really easy for me to see them as characters that have been pushed along the same path from different starting points and how that's led them to be here, right? They both become, Titans or whatever they're called, shifters, I think is what they kind of call them canonically or whatever. They both use their power to achieve their own personal goals. They both become, soldiers. Like I see them as very similar. And now we can see in this episode specifically, Aaron invades the enemy territory and is becoming friendly with someone who, is an enemy.
To add on to that even further, Reiner was forced basically into this position for whatever reason. The 7 of them were chosen to be the new inheritors of the Titans, or 8, however many it was. And so he was forced basically into obtaining this power and having this role. Aaron was forced also into this position by his father, who forced him to eat Aaron to eat him, right? Basically placing him into this role, and his society also raising them to attack the Titans and to like go out and like find the enemy. So yeah, they have a lot of similarities, it seems like.
Yeah. I would also like to point out how much Aaron, both Reiner and Aaron have developed as characters in this season in particular. Mm. We've seen how different Reiner's become, but I would also like to, highlight, just because I'm a big fan of his character from here on out, is just even with the 2 or 3 minutes of interaction we get with Aaron, we see something totally different. I think throughout the first, second, and third seasons, He's very much one track mind. He has a very much one track mind, and you can see him changing slowly but surely. But I think this is just so different. He almost shows empathy. I mean, he straight up shows empathy for Falco. In even subtle things that I didn't even get the first time, even when I was reading the manga and things like that, was that like Aaron makes a note, like when Falco is talking about this like warrior candidate that's better than him, right? Aaron astutely guesses that it's a woman. This is Aaron we're talking about, the like
dense ass Aaron, yeah,
dense ass Aaron. He looks at him and he's like, you're talking about a girl, aren't you? A girl that you like, don't you? And I think that's just incredible. Like I just want to praise that.
Going back to this sort of propaganda piece of, you kind of believe whatever you grew up believing. And it's hard to rewire your brain into not believing or to try and see the other side of it. And I think that's sort of a central tenet in Aaron's conversation here. Is that, and this is why I think it's a cool doublespeak type talk, is that he's talking about both situations, but they're still significantly polarized enough that there's this middle ground, but it's applied in two completely different directions. And I think it's an interesting theme from the author's takeaway, that you do have to be cognizant of what you're told to believe versus what it actually is, versus is it actually the way that there is some actuality to this, or is it just simply difference of opinion and that there isn't real and actual answer to this?